Good morning, wherever you are in the world. We are Unique Labs, and this is the Fashion of Web3 podcast, where we deliver insights into one of the hottest Web3 industries.
We are Taco and Pauline, the co-founders of Unique Labs. Follow us on social media and join our Discord to stay up to date with new episodes and the development of our fashion and lifestyle metaverse. And now, let's get into the episode.
It's Wednesday again, and today we have a very special guest, Diego Borgo. He is a creative metaverse and NFT strategist and advisor, and he helps Fortune 500 brands enter the metaverse and NFT space. Diego was also part of the former Adidas innovation team, so he was really there when the first big fashion brand transitioned to the Web3 space. And we actually met him when we joined his Discord server called Right Click Save Us, which is a really fun community of lots of interesting people like us. Enjoy the episode and leave us all your lovely comments and compliments in our Discord channel for the podcast. We're really excited to have you, Diego. We've been following you for a long time on LinkedIn. I wanted to start with a little icebreaker. Could you tell us something interesting about yourself that most people don't know?
Something interesting about myself that most people don't know. I am black belt in Taekwondo. I did Taekwondo for 15 years. And who doesn't know what Taekwondo is? That's actually a Korean martial art. So I did like Muay Thai, boxing, Taekwondo, and different kinds of martial arts for a long time throughout my sort of like childhood and early adult life.
That sounds interesting.
That's funny, but like nobody ever asked me that before.
Yeah, I'm sure that's of use for your daily work that you're doing now.
Absolutely. Nobody messed with me in the metaverse.
Yeah. Now, could you just introduce yourself and tell us what, maybe your background is?
Sure. My Web2 background is I've been consulting brands in marketing, digital strategy, and branding for the last 8 years. I've been working on agency side and client side since I was basically 16. So I got into business really early because I was really excited about learning by doing rather than just being sitting at school bored trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. And I hit the jackpot. I started exactly on the same niche that I still work today. I've been working with like several different brands in different angles: gaming, fashion, automotive, all types of different industries. And I've been in blockchain since 2017. So I was really excited about the use case and the possibilities of blockchain technology. I'm not like a technical guy, so I didn't, dove really deep into, the actual technicalities of blockchain and becoming a dev or any of it. And I'm not like on a speculator or investor side. So I was really like excited about how this technology has the potential of changing the world, so that was always sort of like my thing. But because of my, background, I never went all in. And that changed when, I first heard of NFTs about a year ago. That was the sort of like aha melting brain moment where, all the creative background, the strategic marketing, branding background came into place because, now this technology is joining and meeting creativity, fashion, art, culture, music, entertainment, gaming, and empowering it through a manner that everybody can take place and everybody can take part of it without asking for permission. So I found that really exciting, and I knew, because I missed on the internet because I was too young to be there, and then I also missed on social because I was at the beginning of my career, and although I was working on things, I wasn't in the best position to take over. And when Web3 showed up in front of me, I was in the best place I could be in my career, and I just went all in. That's basically when I left Adidas after consulting the brand for 4 years. December last year, I had nothing planned. I just literally went all in because I knew that would be the space I had to go into. So since January now, I've been doing basically 3 things. I consult Fortune 500 brands on how to enter the space of NFTs and metaverse. So I advise them. I work with, brands like Salesforce, Unilever, L'Oreal, Volkswagen, and different brands like that. The second thing I do, I work with NFT native projects and Web3 projects. So that's where I keep the knife sharp. And that's where, I learn most of the things I have, and I keep myself at the edge of technology. And the third thing is education. I just dropped a masterclass on how brands should enter the metaverse and NFT space. I do a lot of like, keynotes and panel talks and podcasts. And I talk to, people that are sitting in universities right now writing MBAs and PhDs or whatever you want to call, like papers on the future of this whole thing. Because my main goal as an individual and vision for the space is how I can help, metaverse, blockchain, and NFT technology go mainstream. So that's kind of like what I've been up to from, early on. And that's what I'm up to today.
Cool. Thanks for that intro. Covered a lot of things that we're also going to dive into deeper.
Yeah, I think, you said like, you joined NFT specifically like in the last year, actually the same time when I did. Well, I was introduced into the NFTs from an artist perspective, I believe, because it was a person who's an art expert and it was talking about CryptoPunks, about the technology and why it's so cool. But I'm curious, like, what was the aha moment for you? Like, even though you were into crypto, like since 2017, what happened last year so you got into this?
Yeah, so there's two parts there, right? How I got introduced to it is while I was still at Adidas. A very good friend of mine, Ben Mayer White, is the guy that put that in front of me. He had already a couple waves. This is probably like early April last year. He had a couple waves and he put the apes in front of me and he gave me like an hour, red pill conversation about apes being the future and how you can use your brand and how you can build a brand, how you can build a company, because now you have, ownership and commercial rights over it, and everything's on chain, and that's going to change the world, and how, creativity works and art. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't get it, especially because we were looking at a price tag of like $2,000 back then, and I was like, $2,000 for a photo of an ape that I don't really like find interesting from an art perspective. Like, I don't get it. Right. So a lot of people that I'm talking nowadays, they're like, oh, I'm late. And, it's super hard to understand NFTs. And like, I get it. I was there. So even though I had that whole background I gave you, I still, took some time to figure out and to understand, because it's such a disruptive thing that, is so out there that is so difficult to understand. So to your point, like, that's who got me into it. And then, I didn't get it at first glance, but then as soon as I started diving deeper and trying to, learn more, it came sort of like bit by bit. When I start like getting into the Discord communities, when I start like getting into the actual projects, I start like following people on Twitter, attending to Twitter Space, talking to other people that were a bit earlier in the journey. Like gmoney, for example, is a really good friend, and he, I had a couple conversations with him that were really enlightening to me, because then, he's been around forever. He's a true OG. And when he started showing me what he has seen, I was like, oh, like this thing is interesting, right? So is a progress thing, right? It takes you a little bit to understand, and the more you go down the rabbit hole, the more interesting it becomes. And I still like probably, like at the beginning of the rabbit hole. And I spend a lot of time within it. There's a lot of things I don't understand yet, but I feel, the more I dive, the more I understand, and the more I see sort of like the actual potential.
I really love actually, the whole journey, how you was introduced and the whole process that went through your mind, like, understanding what is the value behind it. And also cool that you mentioned gmoney, because we will have a question about some news from him later this podcast. But what I want to ask you is about the education. You were self-educating, right? And, the education is one of the most important part within the space now, how we onboard more people and how we deliver the message why this technology is valuable. From your side, of course, you have a course. So, and you do a lot of things in terms of like come to the conferences, you educate people about the space, you come to the podcast, you have your own course. From your side, like, how do you think how it's going to happen, like how we should educate the space more so this mass adoption happens a bit more faster maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing we need to make is to make it easier for people to get into the space. I think we obviously talk a lot about education, but the education we're still doing today is very focused on like the technology. So like, oh, this is blockchain. oh, this is cryptocurrency, this is DeFi, this is DAOs, this is a smart contract. Like that's complex, right? So we talk a lot about the technology trying to get people educated. I think the real education we have to be doing here is showing people what is in for them. When you talk to artists, it's like, why is this a new medium? Why is this a renaissance? Why is this first time in history where artists can make money while still alive? If you think about, the major and greatest artists in history, they all died miserably and poor because they couldn't monetize their work while alive. Now, this technology and this new medium changes that because there's a way of doing it, right? So I think we need to start looking from that perspective rather, because then people are going to be like, oh, interesting. Like, I don't really care what the technology is. I want to be part of this renaissance. I want to learn more about how I can take part of it. I want to learn how I can monetize my art. I want to learn how I can build community. I want to learn how I can reward people that have supported me from day one, right? So I think a lot of the conversation has to shift from technology to cultural shift, and especially within Web3. I think one thing that is so important is not about like Web2 to Web3. It's not about the technology that now enables all what's going to happen. It's a mentality shift, right? So when you're talking to brands or when you're talking to people that are building or are part of the space or trying to get into the space, the first thing I try to show them is the mentality shift, is the redistribution of wealth, the way that brands are working with artists now, that they are already thinking about including them on a smart contract and giving them royalty on perpetuity for the work they've done with the brand. It's not about extracting value anymore. It's about co-creating and sharing value based on success. So that sort of like mentality shift is so important, because if Web3 goes to shit tomorrow and we need to like restart on Web4, the mentality is there and the technology doesn't matter in that sense. So, a lot of what I'm trying to do is to simplify the conversations around, showing the people what I have seen without having to sort of like give them a 12 hours explanation on how blockchain works and, what distributed ledger technology is and why there is proof of work and proof of stake and why there is like different ERCs that you can do different things on the smart contract with NFTs, for example. I think like we focus so much on the technology because the space was created by technologists, not for known technologists. And we need to get away from that if you want really people to, be as excited as we are.
That's a really good point. I think you brought up interesting topics. First, education part, the access part, make it easier for brands to access the space. So you're kind of an expert, but we are interested to know, where do you self-educate and how did you also go about positioning yourself as kind of like an expert in the space?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert. That's how I position myself.
Liar.
I mean, it's everyone is like, oh, you've been around forever. I was like, I've been around for like a year, right? Like a year.
Forever.
It feels like forever, but it isn't, right? And there are people that have been around for so much longer, and there's so much more to come. So I'm a curious person, and like the way I operate probably is not a recommendation or not how most of the people would like to operate. That's why I translate and I try to simplify through masterclasses, talks, podcasts, and all of it, because I go all in, like I go deep. So I spend like 20 hours a day into something when I really want to do it. So when I first heard of this thing, I was like literally spending every single awakened hour I had into diving deep and talking to as many people as possible to understand everything. So I went into like every single Discord channel I found. I went to each channel within that Discord channel. I went on all crypto Twitters. I was in every single crypto NFT Twitter space. I was talking to everyone that was answering me. I was like consuming insane amount of content that everyone has produced and put out there. I was reading like Substacks, Medium articles, threads. Like I go mental on those things, So that's why I try to like make it easier for people, because I know that very few people have that appetite and energy to do it. And also I try to translate and simplify a lot of the things I see, because a lot of it is just like deep tech talk, which we don't necessarily need to understand. So a lot of people ask me like, if someone is just joining this space and they're curious, what is your recommendation, right? So my recommendation is not do what I do, because it's not sustainable for majority of the people, but rather I say, there is two verticals. There is two lines actually. One is vertical, another one is horizontal. So the sort of like horizontal line is understanding a high level the technology, very high level, right? So again, we don't need to focus too much on it, but try to at least grasp what this is about. So what is blockchain? A very high level, 2-3 minutes video, give you a glance, and that's it. You need to know to start. What are cryptocurrencies? What are NFTs? What are DAOs? What is DeFi? And like again, really, really briefly, just so you sort of like get an understand of what it is. Then find on a vertical something that you're passionate about. So for example, in this conversation is about fashion. So if you're really into fashion, try to understand how fashion brands are behaving within that space. What is in for them? What are the use cases? What are the possibilities? Where do you fit within it? Or if you're an artist, which artists are out there? How they have been doing it? What are the most prominent? Who is Beeple? Who is Ferocious? Who is X Copy? Like who those people are? Who is Fuck Render, right? Like who those people are and what they've done, what they do, and how you can learn from that. So I would recommend like going deeper into one vertical, because it's so overwhelming within the space, and you don't want to be like learning everything about everything, because at the end of the day you won't have enough hours. So that's kind of like I find to be the easiest. And the most controversial thing I say for most people is don't invest money. Like don't put your money down. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I want to get into this thing. You think 5 grand is good? You think 10 grand is good? You think 30 grand is good? I was like no, like nothing is better. Don't put anything down. Learn first, seize the possibility, because as soon as you put money down, you become an investor. And the goals and ideas of an investor are very different than the goals and ideas of a curious person, right? So if you are in for the curious side, or if you're in because you want to learn something new, putting your money down obviously ties you to that thing, because you don't want to lose your money. So you want to sort of like figure out how you can make a profit or you cannot lose money. But then you change the hat you're wearing from being curious to being a speculator, which is fine, but is a different perspective.
Absolutely agree. Another thing that you kind of mentioned about this mindset shift, and I think it relates not only to brands but also people who are joining with different backgrounds and professions. And like from my experience, like having interaction with different people, like whether they're going to be marketing or whether they're about strategies, I sometimes feel that people don't maybe fully understand what Web3 is, and they're just taking their experiences and putting there, and then I don't see what's different and why it's might not going to work, how they had to approach getting into the space and making this shift in the mind first. Maybe you already kind of covered it, what you were saying.
It's an incredible, great question. And whoever is listening to it right now, if there is a takeaway from this conversation, I think that's it. What people tend to don't understand is that past repeats itself every time. So, those conversations about like, oh, is this a thing? Will be a thing or not? Happens with every single medium. When like print showed up in, I don't know, mid 18th century, for sure people were questioning whether, like being able now to replicate and print stuff at scale, it's going to be interesting. Like who cares, right? Why print matters? And then the TV showed up, and then the radio showed up, when people were questioning like, oh, well, why is this radio thing important? I mean, I like having conversations. Why should I listen to whatever, right? And then TV showed up, and people were also questioning, why does media matter and stuff like that. And people miss on those opportunities to understand that what happens next is exactly what happened before, right? So in this example, like print, TV, radio, internet, e-commerce, social was exactly the same thing. Back on the day, if you remember, or if you ask people that were there, people were questioning the internet as well, right? Or questioning e-commerce. Oh, I will never connect my credit card with this internet thing and buy something online. I'd rather go to the shop and talk to the seller because he knows my shoe size, right? Like this is never going to take off. And now we live most of our time within this space, and we purchase majority of our things through this medium. And then social media was the same. When social media showed up, everybody was like, oh, this is just for kids, right? Like TikTok or or Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, they are now showing us the power of that platform. So instead of being just a place for kids, now governments are trying to control and get on top of it, because they see the power when people get together and they can take down governments around the world. So we've seen that happening through Facebook groups back in the day, when a lot of revolution happened around that started within the social media platform. So people tend to ignore what they don't know, or to sort of despise what they don't know, and not really paying attention. But if you look to the past, it keeps repeating itself, and now it's going to be blockchain, NFT, and metaverse. Is the same thing. It's the same cultural trend. Is the same. A new medium is born. Is the same. There is a new way on now we can communicate and tell stories and connect as humans. Everything comes down to storytelling and the way we connect with as humans, right? Print, TV, radio, internet, social media, e-commerce was exactly that. It changed the way we communicate, and changed the way how we tell stories, and changed the way how we connect as humans. And social and now blockchain, NFT, and metaverse are doing exactly the same. And people are still questioning, right? People are still like, oh no, this thing's gonna, it's not gonna work. Like my cousin, like he's really into tech, and he's telling me that blockchain is bullshit. I'm like, fine, I'm not here to convince, but 20 years down the road, you're gonna be like, fuck, I should have listened to that alien.
I 100% agree, because I do remember like in 2017 when I was learning coding, that's when people started talking about the blockchain. And when I was surrounded by tech people, they were all saying like, that's a bubble. And that's why my attention passed, like I was tech people saying that it's nothing serious. Yeah, I think, maybe our next question is about taking this risk of understanding, like from the brands and big corporation side, that's the next big thing. How does it happen with them? Like, how do they take this risk to be one of the trailblazers, try this technology, and who knows what's going to be next? And maybe this is going to be our question about how it happened with Adidas, because it was one of the first, I think, fashion companies who joined back then. How did it happen?
Yeah, that's a great point. What is exciting is that, a lot of major brands have missed out on this past mediums I just mentioned, because they were too busy trying to keep the business going, right? What is exciting now is that a lot of people that are from the space, natively to it, meaning have been, investing, collecting, creating, taking part of NFTs, metaverse, and being blockchain, they're sitting within those organizations and they're raising the arm and saying, hey, listen, there's something here interesting. Let's get together and see what we can do. So I think the difference now is that, again, is a mindset shift, where people were, really willing to push it forward from inside out. So majority of the brands I work with, and that's changing a little bit, but has been sort of like the sort of like the pattern. The change or the calling comes from, down upwards. So people that are, managers, senior managers, directors that are from the space and within the space, coming up and getting together, and then ganging on like senior leadership and C-suite and saying, hey, listen, you got to listen to us because we got this idea and want your support to make it happen. So literally like the degens that have been around for a while now, getting together and trying to shift organizations from inside out. That's what most of the time happens. There's always that one person that hits me on the side and say, we're trying hard here. Can you come up and help us to do it? Because you've been to place already and you've done things. And I would like you to come and help us to show that in a bigger picture. So that's usually how my relationship starts. I tend to say that my role is not to convince, but to show what I have seen. And by showing what I have seen, people have the option to, try and take the risk, as you said, because it is risky. Or not, and that's totally fine. It's a matter of strategy at the end of the day, and it's a matter of focus within organizations. But what is exciting for me, is that those changes are coming from inside out. Back on a day, it would be like, Boston Consultancy Group coming with a 300 pages report and showing why Gen Z gives a fuck about buying digital wearables. And now is the opposite. Now are people from inside the organization saying like, my grandchild or my cousin spends like 15 hours a day playing Fortnite and is buying skins in the game, and he owns or she owns more things digitally than physically. We should pay attention to that space. So that's kind of like what is exciting for me. And then to your point on Adidas, that's exactly the same pattern that happened, right? So a couple people from the brand that were degenning in the space, collecting already, being around for a couple months or years, that got together and just like start building this gang on how we gonna bring Adidas to the space. And a lot of people from the community have been saying that Adidas back in December was like the only brand in 2021 that got it right. Because, again, is we've done with the brand what we wanted a brand come and do in the space, right? Like that was exactly the same thing. We're like, if we would ever want a brand to come in now, what would we like them to do? So it comes down to being authentic. It comes down to being like community first. It comes down to being like Web3 mentality as well. And that's kind of like what the brand has done really well, in my opinion. And that's what a lot of people are trying to replicate right now. But the times are different. The community is different. The market is different. So there's a lot of things that now need to be seen, and brands are taking advantage of that as well. Brands are taking their time, which I think is important. We are past the time where everybody's thinking that is just collectibles, that is just PFPs. The conversations I'm having with the brands is about like, how can we integrate NFT and blockchain technology into our product? How can we replicate or change the entire membership program that we already have, but bring that into Web3? How can we be prepared for when every single website in the world is going to have a connect wallet button, and then users going to come and connect their wallet, and the website is going to change around based on what you have on your wallet? That's a new personalization way on how you can connect better with your consumers. So that's where their head's going. And I'm so excited to see that transition being so fast, because, that's being like a difference between like 4 to 5 months from now.
One thing that I thought that came to my mind while you were talking was, if there's a fashion brand like, let's say, gmoney, who just launched his own fashion brand that is Web3 native, I wonder whether it's more challenging for a Web3 native brand to build a following and kind of establish itself in the fashion space versus a Web2 fashion company who is trying to move to Web3 and has to kind of like convince a lot of people along the way, or directly like targeting people who are already kind of in the space. I wonder what you think about that. Like maybe what's more challenging?
Yeah, I think the challenges are absolutely different. It's the same like a tech startup trying to get a product as an MVP and go to market in a month, and then like, I don't know, like Google, Facebook, Microsoft trying to do the same, right? The challenge, the scale, and the risk are absolutely different. I think there's also different objectives behind it. And let's break that down into these two different spheres, as you put, because I find that quite exciting. So for G, for example, he's native to the space. He has a following, and people respect him. So he's a brand in that sense, right? He has a thing like 250 to almost 300,000 followers on Twitter, for example. And like, he's, for me, and I'm biased because I'm his friend, but he's the most respected person out there when it comes to the space, natively, right? Born in the space and building in the space, and has an immense followership and influence. So I see him as on the same level as any other fashion brand out there whenever he's putting something out, but they're playing different leagues, right? He's playing to the sort of like NFT native league for now, which doesn't mean that, a couple of years from now, he cannot go mainstream and be playing and partnering with the biggest fashion house in the world. Look at Bored Apes, right? They are a little bit older than 1 year now, and they partner with Adidas. Look at CryptoPunks, right? Look at Punk's comic, for example. Also, Pixelvod also partner with Adidas in that sense. Look at 10KTF. They partner with Gucci. They partner with Puma. So like, I see the difference on the now, but what a lot of people are missing out is that they're not seeing those projects or those people as brands. And that's what's exciting, right? Because as soon as they become brands, like G's more and more going towards, they're going to become as relevant as, like Kanye was, and he is still within the fashion industry. Or, like any creator that is now disrupting the space by coming with new ideas as a person rather than, a major fashion house. So I think the challenge that G has are way smaller than big brands because he does whatever he wants. He's the one taking the calls, and he's well known within the space. If you look, for example, at his project Admit One, right? He selected 1,000 people to come together with him in this journey of bringing mass education and shaping the future of Web3. And after a couple months that he's launched the project, which was for free for people that he selected and people from his community to mint, the floor is steady at almost 20 grand, even though we are in a badass bear market right now. And that displays how much respect he's got, and that displays brand equity, and that displays the importance for brands to be paying attention to someone like him because he's got influence natively from the space. So people are literally willing to pay 20 grand to be in a Discord channel and part of his community. That's the same thing when you think about access token or access to people, or even trying to be part of a tribe that people do when they buy a Gucci bag, right? So in that sense, that's what I think is exciting from a native creator from the space that is launching a fashion brand. But in the other side, he doesn't have the reach as Gucci or Adidas or Nike. He doesn't have the heritage and the size yet of any of those brands, right? So that's the difference. I think that when you want to do things at scale and in the macro, obviously it's much easier for those fashion houses. But the difference is when you want to enter this space, you need to understand it really, really well. We've seen examples of brands that fuck it up from day one because they don't understand. They literally don't even take the time to understand. They just want to put something out there and do an activation, quote unquote, as they used to do on Twitter and stuff like that, right? So I think that the advantage for someone like him to be in the position he is that now he can choose the big brands he wants to work with and, use his platform and his community to help them come into this space natively, like what Adidas has done. That's why he was the chosen one to partner with Adidas. So I find it's really exciting that, we are in a, again, mindset shift where brands are having to accept that they are not the most important people in the room. Rather, we have an eye-to-eye conversation now because now it's about community and not consumers anymore. And when community get together with, creators and brand, that's where I think the really, really exciting thing on Web3 is going to happen.
Absolutely agree. When we talk about the future, we got this news about the gmoney only today, right? And yeah, he might has maybe less exposure than the brands, but thinking about the future and thinking how even not in the fashion business, but just in general, how things sometimes changing. Do you see that it might be the first step how in the future fashion industry might change and the big players and the main players are going to be maybe people who are from Web3 and, some luxury companies like gmoney, Kanye West, and I don't know, his ex-wife Kim Kardashian. Maybe a few years ago, we wouldn't think that there will be the top people in the fashion industry who are in all the fashion shows and they're the most important guests. But look at them now, they are leading from the influencer side. So what do you think, whether in the future we can expect that the companies and the corporations that are now leaders in the fashion industry, can it be changed with the blockchain technology and maybe luxury brands like gmoney will be the next leaders in the space?
100%. And the shift here from what you just mentioned is in Web2, we had influencers that had followers and fans. And now on Web3, we have creators that have a community. So that's what's exciting because there's a different relationship. When you're an influencer, you're influencing people to think the way you want them to think, and you're selling something to them because they're consumers and fans. And on Web3 now, you are co-creating with the community because you're a creator, and a lot of times you were part of the community and you are part of the community, and you're coming out to do something cool and something that they like and something that they want to be part of, and you were sharing the success with them by different models. Right? So that's the major difference. And I have no question that this is going to happen, not because I have a crystal ball and I can predict the future, but if you look at what Bored Apes did is exactly that model. That's why they were so successful, right? They built one of the most incredible brands in the shortest period of time in history without spending a single cent in marketing. And how they did it? They basically used their community, their 10,000 die-hard community members that had ownership of their own sort of like, digital asset, to then go out there and co-create their sub-brands under it. So it's so exciting that you have an umbrella brand that now people can come under that umbrella. And instead of you telling them what they can do, now they can do whatever the fuck they want. And when that happens, you bring creators on the same boat than you. And that's where the dynamite is. And I think that the future, for all those brands we are talking about is going to be exactly like that. One of the things that I'm most excited right now is what the Fabricant's doing, for example. So if you look at the business model behind what the Fabricant's doing is they are doing digital fashion only, and they want to be positioned, by 2025, when we forecast that metaverse is going to hit mainstream. They want to be positioned to be the one that dressed everyone that comes along in the metaverse, right? And the model they are doing on the back, which I'm seeing, and I find really exciting, is that they are co-creating and co-sharing the success and the gains with the people from the community. So instead of a brand dictating the next seasons, as usually is the way, now what you can do as a part of that community is that you can create whatever you want to wear next. And that's, again, the first time in history where people can decide at scale and together how they want to go about next when it comes to fashion. Not just as an individual, but if you're really talented and people dig what you're doing, you can become the next Kanye. And that's going to happen at scale digitally from everywhere in the world, no matter if you are in the Philippines, no matter if you are in the US, no matter if you're in India, nobody cares. As long as you got talent and as long as you have something that people like, it's going to happen. So again, there is this sort of like balance of power and opportunity that before, if you want to be a creator, or if you want to be in the entertainment industry and you're not like in LA and Hollywood, there's no way you're going to make it. Now you can be anywhere in the world. And if you do something that people love, that's all what takes.
There was one thing, a brand that came up also shortly before the call was Gucci. So Gucci is quite present on different platforms. I was speaking with different people in digital fashion and some diehard Gucci fans who were saying that they don't like to see Gucci on different platforms like Roblox, Decentraland. So I was wondering if a fashion brand like Gucci, who has like a massive audience worldwide, does it come across as desperate if they're like establishing themselves on all the different platforms right away, or do you feel like this is a natural thing for the fashion brands to do now?
I think it's a genius move. I think they're positioning themselves to be at the forefront of the next largest culture shift we're going to experience probably in our generation. And they are doing that into different pillars. They're not just like, oh, hey, here's an NFT project I created. They're taking on crypto as payment method. They're doing Web2 metaverse activations. They're doing Web3 metaverse activations. They drop their own NFT project. They partner with different artists. They partner with different NFT projects. So they are testing the waters and learning and seeing what matters the most to their community, so they can refine and double down. Like that's how you win, and they get it from early on. And that's what's exciting. And for whoever is saying like, oh, like I don't like seeing this brand being on these platforms. People said the same thing about e-commerce and social media, right? Like, oh, I don't like they sell out. Like, oh, I don't like that my favorite artist is now on Spotify. They sell out. Yeah, so what? They're gonna go there because that's how they're gonna be bigger. That's how they're gonna be more relevant. That's how they're gonna keep shifting and changing the future. That's what they've been doing, and that's why they're relevant, right? When you look at Balenciaga has been around for almost fucking 100 years. How do you do that? By becoming and by keeping relevant, by forecasting and seeing the trends, adapting and moving towards it, by creating and shaping the future as well, right? You don't like exist for 100 years just by sticking around and doing whatever people feel you should be doing.
And also those people that actually don't agree with Gucci, for example, joining on different platforms and having all these cool collaborations with Web3 artists, maybe those people are not the target group that's going to end up buying and Gucci tries to address.
Yeah, or maybe they're becoming their grandparents. They are afraid of the new thing. They're afraid of the new mediums. They're afraid of the new technology. They don't understand, so they push it back. Yeah, maybe.
That's what it looks like, to be honest. Looking at also my parents and their adoption rate and speed.
Yeah, you know what is insane, especially within the space? I thought that when I got into it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be hanging out with like 15 years old that have been in gaming, that have been buying digital assets forever, that already is so natural and so native to them. That's the audience they're going to be surrounded by. But then I start talking to people and everybody's like 30 plus. I'm like, wait a minute, like where are the Gen Z? Where are they? And they aren't there yet. But if you look at native behavior, there is no question that an upcoming generation is going to come so native to it that buying something digitally, is going to be natural to them. So it's so interesting for me to observe the trend of younger people than I becoming their grandparents and parents and being afraid of the next thing, because I wouldn't expect that. Obviously, once social media all happened and everybody was like, oh, that's a fad and that doesn't matter and that's not going to go anywhere, the youngsters were the ones that jumped first, right? They shaped the future. That's why TikTok is exploding now within the demographics as well, right? And as soon our parents or we get into TikTok, they're going to bounce and go somewhere else because they're always looking for a platform that's more exciting. But that behavior is not so far being replicated within the space, which I find very intriguing.
And it's really interesting, like, I also mentioned about, like, it's Gen Z, how they're transitioning, like, and how potentially it's going to be a natural thing for them and they won't be questioning. So I think it comes to maybe their self-identification within the digital space. What are your thoughts, like, from the business perspective, when we talk about like digital identities, like how it's going to be treated, like how companies, brands, projects like us then going to approach these digital identities? Like, will we be looking at the owner of this identity, or we will be looking at this, maybe one person has like a few different digital identities, like on a different platforms?
This is a fascinating question because I think is the most exciting thing in the last spoken within the space. Digital identity is going to be so powerful because of the same things I said before when it comes to leveling the playground, the playfield. Everybody's going to be the same. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter the color of your skin, doesn't matter which gender you identify with, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter the language you speak, doesn't matter where you grew up, doesn't matter the social class you are in, you're rich, poor, multimillionaire, whatever. Doesn't matter who your parents are, doesn't matter how you look like, doesn't matter how your body look like, doesn't matter if you got any disability or anything. Nothing matters, because now with the digital identities we can be whoever we want, and that's what's so exciting. And like, if there is a second take from this conversation that if you're listening to, I think it's incredibly important, is I think people are going to come to the metaverse because what they can do, but they're going to stay in the metaverse because of who they can be. So that's what's going to be exciting, right? Because now you can be whatever, not just whoever you want. Because if you want to be a toaster or a fridge or a horse, you can, because there is no limits of like self-expression, and however you want to express yourself now it's possible because it's all digital. There is no physical laws and there is no like judgment as you as a person, because you can be anonymous. And the second aspect is that people are going to be able to do whatever they want. People are going to be able to have different identities, as you suggested. The way, and it is already happening, right? Like all this metaverse conversation right now just like burns my brain down to the ground, because everybody's making it so complicated, right? Oh, metaverse is when we're going to go to the matrix and we're going to wear VR, and metaverse adoption is going to come when everybody's wearing lenses. I'm like, no, fuck face, the metaverse is already here. We are in the metaverse since we've been spending time in digital for a long time. We're spending time exponentially in the digital environment for a long time, and that's the metaverse. The different identities are already here. The way you behave on LinkedIn is different than the way you behave on Instagram, is different than the way you behave on TikTok, that is different than the way you behave on Twitter, and it's different than the way you behave on Facebook. Like, this is already here, right? The Zoom calls of the world, and the ways we connect and engage with each other digitally is the metaverse. The metaverse is simply a digital and the metaverse is simply an evolution of how we experience the digital world and how we connect with each other as a species. And now with this new technology and this new demand, this new interest around 3D spaces and virtual rooms, and the sort of like things that we've been seeing, like Sandbox, Decentraland, Spatial, all of those platforms building, is just a way that we can replicate our connections on the offline world in a more similar way in the digital world. It's that simple. We're not like going nuts and putting, VR for 24/7 and living in the matrix. I definitely don't believe that's going to be the case. It's just going to be a way to break through those, squared walls that we are when you're talking on video, or this weird thing that we feel so far away from each other, even though we've been spending an hour now talking to each other, because we cannot do more than just look at a camera. So that's kind of like how I feel about this whole conversation. And, digital identity is going to just empower that at scale. And it's going to be so exciting because, as you said, you can be different. You can have different identities in different places. You can be whoever you want. You can do whatever you want. And I feel for a lot of people, because we are blessed. We are blessed to have the opportunities of, being who we want to be or expressing ourselves who we want to express. But there are a lot of people that aren't. They're being pushed from society. They are excluded from society. They don't have this opportunity, and now they do, and that's life changing for a lot of people. And I think it's going to be really exciting, to again plan the play field and make it easier for people to express themselves.
100%. I think you just gave me goosebumps right there when you were saying people come to the metaverse for what they can do, but they stay there because of who they can be. That's a really key thing that we're also really trying to emphasize with our platform that we're building. We have a few really quick questions for you. What will make the metaverse a lasting thing?
Demand. All comes down to demand. As long as people want to connect and find a new medium on where they want to be, it's going to last. So if the market dictates that that's the next thing, it's going to be the next thing. And if it doesn't, then it won't.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would like to be an alien.
But an alien that can do what?
Just tell people the future.
Interesting. Now, if you had $1 for every person that is rolling their eyes at you when you say NFTs, how rich would you be?
Very rich.
Same for us.
No, I mean it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Especially because the biggest presence I have on social, on my works on LinkedIn, and a lot of people find it contradictory because LinkedIn is just this dumb space that people are just there shilling corporate stuff. And that's exactly why I'm there. I'm exactly, my goal there is to change the way that platform is perceived and to change the way we connect, because it's an incredible place to connect with people that you can know more about them than on Twitter, for example, and you can have much more productive conversations, and you can build business, and you can, build ideas, and you can meet people, and you can network. So even though LinkedIn before this whole thing for me was always this very negative platform, not as negative as Instagram, by the way, but negative. Now I have almost no pushback there. I have people being curious. I have people asking questions that are very important. I don't think we should be in this echo chamber that usually we get into. I think it's important to get people asking the hard questions and making us think about what we are saying, if that even makes sense. But, it's not as difficult as I thought. I thought initially that I would be getting hate from left and right, but it's definitely not the case. So, I think people are curious, and it's our role as people that have been in the space for longer to show them what we have seen and try to, make that conversation a bit easier for them to digest so they can take a decision whether they want to be involved or not.
I should agree that for me, LinkedIn, before Web3, I didn't actually use it. And now it's one of the platforms that I use the most, I would say, on a daily basis. Maybe I can come back and I connect with people. And I actually connected with you from the LinkedIn, because I don't even remember when was it, but I think there was somebody in the Web3 space who I knew and had a repost or something of you, and that's how I found you. So yeah, it's getting really excited. I think we will let you go with all the questions that we've had. We are really, really thankful. And yeah, thank you for your time and for all your insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really stoked for the opportunity and for the platform. Thank you.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining us today. Did you find this conversation insightful? Do you have any questions we should address next time? Send us all your questions, feedback, or topic ideas via Discord, where we'll have a dedicated channel for the podcast. Alternatively, feel free to send us an email or a message via our socials. Links are in the notes. Until next week.